What does it mean to witness the end of a life, to stand in the crowd and feel the palpable tension in the air as the inevitable approaches? As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows over the ancient stones of the Colosseum, one might wonder, is there a limit to human cruelty? Or does the thirst for spectacle and power know no bounds? This is the haunting question that echoes through time, reverberating within the very walls that once housed the most gruesome spectacles known to humanity. The Colosseum, a marvel of Roman engineering, was not merely a venue for entertainment. It was an arena where the boundaries of mortality and morality blurred, where the cries of the condemned became part of the brutal symphony of the crowd's delight. The Colosseum, inaugurated in 80 AD under Emperor Titus, was a grand stage for the macabre theater of death, where the brutal reality of torture and execution became an art form. Its construction marked a pivotal moment in Roman history, reflecting the empire's might and the depravity that often accompanied its grandeur. As the sun gleamed off the polished marble, and the scent of sweat and blood mingled in the air, a visceral anticipation gripped the thousands who gathered within its massive stone embrace. They came not just to witness death, but to revel in the spectacle of suffering, to feel the adrenaline coursing through their veins as they cheered for the demise of those who had been deemed unworthy of life. The mood was electric, a heady mix of excitement and dread, as the crowds packed the tiered seating of the Colosseum. From the patricians in their luxurious silks to the plebeians in their simple tunics, all eyes were fixed on the arena, a vast expanse of sand stained with the memories of countless souls. The sounds of the crowd swelled, a cacophony of shouts and cheers, punctuated by the ominous growls of the beasts held in the depths below, waiting to be unleashed. The air was thick with a mixture of blood, fear, and anticipation, an intoxicating aroma that fueled the frenzy of the spectators. As the gates opened with a creaking groan, the first of the condemned were thrust into the arena, their faces pale with fear, their eyes wide with the realization of their fate. They were not merely victims. They were the unwilling actors in this horrific drama, stripped of their dignity and humanity. Adorned in costumes that mocked their impending doom, they embodied figures from myth and legend, each condemned soul a tangible representation of society's wrath. The crowd roared with delight, their laughter mingling with the cries of despair, creating a symphony of horror that echoed through the Colosseum's arches. In this brutal theater of death, the execution was not just an act of punishment. It was a spectacle designed to entertain the masses and reinforce the power of the state. It was a grim reminder of the fate that awaited those who dared to defy the authority of Rome. The psychological impact of such public executions ran deep, instilling a sense of fear that rippled through the populace. To witness such displays of violence was to understand the consequences of rebellion, to internalize the belief that one could be reduced to nothing more than a source of entertainment at the whim of the powerful. As the sun finally vanished, leaving only a sliver of twilight, the air became charged with an unsettling energy, a foreboding reminder of the darkness that lay ahead. The Colosseum, an architectural masterpiece, was also a monument to cruelty, a place where the line between humanity and savagery blurred. The spectators, entranced by the unfolding horror, became complicit in the brutality, their cheers and gasps feeding the insatiable hunger for violence that defined this era. In the shadows of the Colosseum, the cries of the condemned echoed like ghosts, haunting reminders of the lives extinguished within its walls. The allure of power and the thrill of bloodshed had created a society that reveled in its own barbarism. As the last echoes of the day faded into silence, one could not help but wonder, what does it say about humanity when the suffering of others becomes a source of entertainment? The darkness of this reality lingered, a chilling prelude to the horrors that would unfold in the chapters to come. As the sun rose on the horizon, casting a pale light over the remnants of the night's horrors, the Colosseum stood proud yet ominous, a testament to the complexities of Roman society. The brutality that echoed through its arches did not arise in a vacuum. It was nourished by a confluence of political ambitions, social values, and deeply ingrained beliefs about justice and punishment. To understand the spectacle of the arena, one must delve into the historical context that allowed such atrocities to flourish, examining the very fabric of Roman culture that embraced this grotesque form of entertainment. The Roman Empire, at its zenith, was a sprawling entity that thrived on conquest and subjugation. It was a society built on the backs of slaves, prisoners of war, and those who dared to defy the authority of the state. The concept of damnatio ad bestias, or condemnation to beasts, was a profoundly chilling punishment reserved for the most egregious offenders, those who transgressed the laws of Rome, often in ways that threatened the stability of the empire. The mere existence of such a punishment was a reflection of a society that valued order and control above all else. To the Romans, the execution of the condemned was not merely a matter of justice. It was a public demonstration of the power of the state, a spectacle meant to instill fear and obedience among the populace. The decision to execute criminals in the arena served multiple purposes. It not only provided entertainment, but also acted as a stark reminder of the consequences of rebellion. For the ruling class, the spectacles were a means of diverting attention from political strife and economic troubles. As the emperors sought to consolidate their power, these grand displays of violence became tools for propaganda, reinforcing their authority while simultaneously unifying the citizens in a shared experience of bloodlust. The arena was a stage upon which the emperor could display his might, and the crowd's adulation became a powerful reinforcement of his rule. Yet amid this culture of fear and spectacle, the individuals who were condemned to die were often mere pawns in a much larger game. Many were slaves captured in war, their lives reduced to the whims of their captors. Others were Christians, scapegoated for the empire's problems and subjected to horrific tortures in the name of public entertainment. These individuals, stripped of their identities and humanity, were often forced to play roles that mocked their suffering, dressed as mythological figures only to be devoured by wild beasts in front of roaring crowds. Among the key figures in this narrative was Emperor Nero, a ruler infamous for his cruelty and excess. Under his reign, the use of damnatio ad bestias became particularly gruesome, as Nero reveled in the suffering of those he considered beneath him. His infamous games, characterized by the execution of Christians, were not only a means of punishing dissent, but also a horrifying spectacle designed to showcase his power and entertain the masses. The mythological reenactments during these games served to elevate the brutality to a theatrical level, transforming the arena into a twisted stage where the lines between reality and myth blurred, creating a grotesque form of art that both fascinated and horrified spectators. The larger social values that allowed for such cruelty to flourish were deeply entrenched in Roman culture. The belief in virtus, or virtue, emphasized strength and stoicism, often glorifying those who faced death with courage. In contrast, weakness was derided, and the condemned were often depicted as failures in the eyes of society. This dichotomy created an environment where executions became a public spectacle, a form of entertainment that allowed the citizens to affirm their own superiority while simultaneously experiencing a collective catharsis through the vicarious suffering of others. As the crowd cheered, they were not merely spectators. They were participants in a ritual that reinforced their place within the social hierarchy. Moreover, the intricate design of the Colosseum, with its elaborate system of animal pens and trapdoors, was a testament to the ingenuity of Roman engineering, but it also facilitated the spectacle of violence. The venatores, skilled hunters who traveled across the empire to capture exotic animals, ensured that the arena could host a variety of terrifying beasts, heightening the drama of each execution. The thrill of watching a condemned prisoner face a lion or bear became a perverse form of entertainment, where the crowd's bloodlust was satisfied by the primal struggle between man and beast. As the sun set on another day of gruesome entertainment, the echoes of the crowd's cheers lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the depths of human depravity. The stories of those who perished in the arena, reduced to mere entertainment, serve as chilling testaments to the consequences of a society that thrived on violence and spectacle. In the shadows of the Colosseum, the ghosts of the condemned awaited their reckoning, their lives extinguished in the name of power and performance. As dawn broke, flooding the Colosseum with a muted golden light, the air was still thick with the remnants of the previous day's horrors. The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the blood-stained sand, a silent testimony to the brutality that had unfolded within this grand arena. The echoes of despair and anguish reverberated off the stone walls, lingering like a specter haunting the very heart of Rome. This was not merely a place of entertainment. It was a crucible of suffering, a stage where the ultimate price of defiance was paid in blood. The day of execution began with the melancholic sound of trumpets resonating across the Colosseum, summoning the spectators to witness the grim spectacle that awaited them. As the crowd gathered, the atmosphere was charged with a mix of excitement and dread. The sun's rays pierced through the stands, illuminating the faces of the eager onlookers. Some wore expressions of glee, while others exhibited a more somber anticipation. The tension was palpable, an electric hum that coursed through the throngs of people, weaving a tapestry of shared expectation. Inside the darkened bowels of the Colosseum, the condemned awaited their fate, their hearts pounding in rhythm with the distant roar of the crowd. They were stripped of their humanity, dressed in mockery, often adorned in costumes that represented the very myths that would soon seal their doom. Among them was a young woman, her hands trembling as she adjusted the tattered costume of Pasiphae, a figure from mythology known for her tragic fate. She could almost hear the faint whispers of her fellow captives, their words mingling with the scent of sweat and fear that filled the air. The atmosphere was thick, oppressive, as if the walls themselves were bearing witness to the agony about to unfold. As the gates of the arena creaked open, a rush of adrenaline surged through the condemned. The blinding sunlight struck them like a blow, illuminating their faces, once full of hope, now etched with despair. The roar of the crowd surged like a tidal wave, crashing against their senses, drowning out their thoughts. With each step into the arena, the ground beneath them felt foreign, the coarse sand a stark reminder of the violence that had soaked it in the past. The spectators, with their eager faces and gleaming eyes, loomed large, a collective entity that stripped the condemned of their individuality. They were no longer people. They were mere characters in a grotesque play. The first act began with the release of the beasts, massive lions and ravenous bears, their muscles rippling beneath their fur, eyes gleaming with primal hunger. The crowd erupted into a frenzy, their cheers echoing through the Colosseum like thunder. In that moment, the atmosphere transformed from mere anticipation into a cacophony of bloodlust. The sound of claws scraping against the sand, the guttural growls of the beasts, and the frantic shouts of the spectators intertwined, creating a symphony of terror that resonated through the very bones of the arena. As the condemned faced their fate, the reality of their situation settled in like a heavy fog. They were not just fighting for their lives, they were grappling with the weight of despair and hopelessness. The young woman, embodying Pasiphae, felt a surge of defiance rise within her chest. She looked at the approaching bear, its massive form looming closer, and for a fleeting moment she imagined herself as more than just a victim. She was a tragic hero, a figure of myth grappling with her own mortality. But as the bear lunged, that defiance evaporated, replaced by instinctual terror. The brutal reality of the arena was not just in the bloodshed, but in the visceral experience of the condemned. The sharp, acrid smell of sweat and fear mingled with the metallic scent of blood, filling their nostrils and overwhelming their senses. The weight of the crowd's gaze bore down upon them, a constant reminder of their impending doom. Each gasp, each cry, became a part of the arena's grim soundtrack, a haunting melody that would echo through the ages. As the first blood was spilled, a collective gasp arose from the spectators. The young woman felt the beast's powerful claws rake against her flesh, a sharp pain that coursed through her body, igniting every nerve. Time seemed to slow. She could hear the frantic beating of her own heart, drowning out the cheers of the crowd. In that agonizing moment, she became acutely aware of the fragility of life, the stark contrast between the thrill of the crowd and the despair of her own imminent death. The blood that seeped into the sand felt warm and sticky, a visceral reminder of her humanity, a stark contrast to the monstrous roles they had been forced to play. Around her, the arena descended into chaos. Other condemned souls faced similar fates, their cries mingling with the roars of the beasts. The frenzy of the crowd intensified, a primal spectacle that reveled in the suffering before them. Faces once eager and bright were now consumed by a lust for violence, their cheers rising to a fevered pitch. The very air vibrated with the energy of death, a grotesque celebration of mortality that left no room for compassion. As the arena became a tableau of carnage, the young woman caught sight of the emperor's box, where Nero sat, his expression a mixture of delight and boredom. For him, this was not merely a spectacle. It was a performance designed to showcase his power and control over life and death. The cheers of the crowd echoed in his ears like a symphony, a soundtrack to the brutality he orchestrated. In that moment, he was both a ruler and a spectator, reveling in the bloodshed that served to reinforce his authority. As the final act unfolded, the sun began its descent, casting a crimson hue across the Colosseum, as if the very heavens wept for the souls lost within its bounds. The young woman, in her final moments, felt an overwhelming sense of despair, mixed with a flicker of defiance. She was more than a victim. She was a testament to the horrors of a society that thrived on cruelty. In her heart, she clung to the hope that her story would not be forgotten, that her suffering would serve as a reminder of the darkness that lay within the hearts of those who cheered for blood. As the last echoes of the crowd faded, the Colosseum stood silent, a monument to the brutality of human nature. The sand, soaked in blood and despair, became a grave for the forgotten, a reminder that within the grand theater of life, the lines between hero and villain, spectator and participant were often blurred. As the final cries of the condemned faded into the twilight, the arena fell silent, leaving only the haunting echoes of the brutality that had unfolded. The Colosseum, once a vibrant hub of entertainment, now stood as a graveyard of shattered dreams and extinguished lives. The aftermath of such grotesque spectacles reverberated beyond the confines of the arena, weaving a complex tapestry of consequences that would alter the very fabric of Roman society. In the days that followed the execution, the atmosphere in Rome was charged with a palpable tension. The citizens, still buzzing from the adrenaline of the spectacle, grappled with a mix of exhilaration and horror. For many, the thrill of witnessing death had been intoxicating, a primal experience that stirred something deep within their souls. Yet, beneath this veneer of excitement lay a simmering unease, a lingering question that haunted the populace. At what cost did their entertainment come? The collective conscience of Rome was confronted with the dark reality of their society, a world where human life was so easily sacrificed for the sake of spectacle. For the families of the condemned, the consequences were immediate and devastating. Many were left to mourn in silence, their grief rendered invisible by the public nature of the executions. The young woman who had embodied Pasiphae was not just a nameless victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend. Her family, now bereft of their loved one, faced the harsh reality of their loss alone. In the shadow of the Colosseum, their pain was drowned out by the cheers of the crowd, a stark reminder of the hollowness of public spectacle. The psychological trauma inflicted upon the witnesses was profound and multifaceted. Those who had cheered the loudest, caught in the frenzy of the moment, found themselves grappling with the weight of their complicity. The thrill of the hunt, the adrenaline of the chase, had fed their primal instincts, but as the excitement waned, a chilling realization set in. They had reveled in the suffering of others. Many began to question their own morality, haunted by the faces of the condemned, their cries echoing in their minds long after the blood had dried on the sand. This internal conflict created a rift within the community, as some sought solace in their shared guilt, while others buried their emotions deep beneath layers of denial. At the political level, the consequences were equally significant. Emperor Nero, ever the opportunist, seized upon the spectacle to further solidify his grasp on power. The bloodshed had served its purpose. It had united the populace in a shared experience of fear and excitement, reinforcing the emperor's authority. However, the seeds of dissent were being sown. As whispers of discontent grew louder, the very spectacle that had once brought the citizens together began to fracture the societal fabric. The realization that their entertainment hinged upon the suffering of the innocent would not be easily forgotten. In the wake of the executions, the city of Rome experienced a palpable shift. The Colosseum, once a symbol of the empire's grandeur, became a site of mourning for some, a place where the ghosts of the condemned lingered. The blood-stained sand served as a grim reminder of the cost of entertainment, and as the citizens continued to flock to the arena for more spectacles, a complex web of emotions intertwined. The thrill of the hunt persisted, but for many it was now laced with a sense of dread. The echoing cheers of the crowd became tainted, a reflection of the darkness that resided within their hearts. Those who had witnessed the brutality firsthand often found themselves grappling with nightmares that plagued their sleep. The vivid images of violence replayed in their minds, the faces of the condemned haunting their thoughts. Many sought solace in the arms of their loved ones, yet found it difficult to articulate the turmoil within. The psychological scars left by the executions ran deep, creating a chasm between those who had watched the spectacle and those who had not. Families were torn apart by differing perspectives on the events, as some celebrated the bloodshed while others mourned the loss of humanity. As time passed, the legacy of the executions began to take shape. The arena, once a place of joyful revelry, transformed into a site of reflection. Philosophers and poets began to grapple with the moral implications of such spectacles, questioning the very nature of humanity. The writings of the time began to echo with themes of suffering, cruelty, and the price of entertainment. The Colosseum became a focal point for discussions on justice and morality, as the gruesome events of the past served as cautionary tales for future generations. However, amidst the shadows of despair, glimmers of resilience emerged. The survivors of the executions, though battered and broken, began to find their voices. Stories of the condemned were shared in hushed tones, their lives remembered not as mere victims, but as individuals with hopes, dreams, and aspirations. The acts of cruelty that had been celebrated in the arena gave rise to a growing movement that sought to challenge the status quo, advocating for a more compassionate society that recognized the humanity of all. As the sun set on another day in Rome, the Colosseum stood as a testament to the complexity of human nature. The consequences of the executions reverberated through time, echoing the age-old struggle between power and morality. The ghosts of the condemned lingered, their stories weaving into the very fabric of the empire, reminding the living of the darkness that could emerge when humanity turned a blind eye to suffering. The arena, once a site of entertainment, became a haunting reminder of the price of cruelty and the resilience of the human spirit. As the years unfolded, the Colosseum continued to stand sentinel over the city of Rome, a colossal reminder of the Empire's complex relationship with power, cruelty, and the human condition. The legacy of the brutal spectacles that had transpired within its walls became woven into the very fabric of Roman identity, reverberating through the ages, shaping not only the course of history, but also the philosophical inquiries that would endure for centuries. The haunting question remained: what does it mean to be human in a world that celebrates suffering? In the aftermath of the executions, as the blood-soaked sands were gradually replaced by the dust of history, the Colosseum transformed from a site of entertainment into a monument of reflection. The stories of those who had perished, once reduced to mere fodder for the bloodlust of the masses, began to emerge as powerful narratives of resilience and tragedy. Philosophers, poets, and playwrights sought to capture the essence of these lives lost, crafting works that would challenge future generations to grapple with the moral implications of their actions. The writings of the time echoed with themes of justice, cruelty, and the nature of suffering. Thinkers such as Seneca and Cicero pondered the moral fabric of society, questioning the ethics of public executions and the desensitization that accompanied such spectacles. The Colosseum became a focal point for discourse on the nature of power and its relationship to violence. The very existence of the arena, a colossal structure built upon the blood of the innocent, served as a cautionary tale, an admonition against the perils of complacency in the face of cruelty. Yet, as the philosophical reflections deepened, a counter-narrative emerged, one that emphasized the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable suffering. The stories of the condemned, once overshadowed by the roar of the crowd, began to resonate with a sense of dignity and humanity. These were not just victims. They were individuals with dreams, aspirations, and the will to resist even in their darkest moments. Their lives became symbols of defiance against a society that had stripped them of their humanity, reminding future generations of the importance of empathy and compassion. The Colosseum, now a relic of a bygone era, stood as a stark reminder of the duality of human nature, the capacity for both great cruelty and profound compassion. The ghosts of the condemned lingered within its walls, their stories echoing in the hearts of those who dared to remember them. As the sun set on the horizon, casting a warm glow over the ancient stones, the arena became a symbol of hope and a call to action, urging society to reflect on its past and strive for a more just and compassionate future. In contemporary times, the legacy of the Colosseum continues to resonate, reminding us of the fragility of human rights and the importance of protecting the dignity of all individuals. As we navigate a world that still grapples with issues of violence and injustice, the lessons learned from the spectacles of ancient Rome become increasingly relevant. The thirst for entertainment, often at the expense of others, poses a constant threat to our shared humanity. The challenge lies in recognizing that the stories of the past are not merely relics of history, but living narratives that demand our attention and reflection. As we ponder the implications of the Colosseum's legacy, we are confronted with the question: what do we choose to remember, and what do we choose to forget? The haunting echoes of suffering remind us of the importance of empathy and the responsibility we bear to honor the lives lost to cruelty. In acknowledging the darkness of our past, we can strive to create a future where compassion triumphs over brutality. In the end, the Colosseum stands not just as an architectural marvel, but as a testament to the complexities of human nature, a place where the boundaries of morality were tested, and the consequences of our actions reverberated through time. The stories of those who suffered within its walls serve as powerful reminders that our humanity is defined not by our capacity for violence, but by our ability to recognize and honor the dignity of every individual. As we reflect on the legacy of the arena, we are called to action, to ensure that the lessons of the past continue to shape our understanding of justice, compassion, and the enduring human spirit.